Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Etech Leadership Table. This is a podcast where we invite you to pull up a chair, grab a cup of coffee, and join us as we tackle some remarkable discussions on everything leadership. I'm Melissa Wood. I'm your host. I'm the Dean of Leadership Development at Etech Global Services. Welcome to the Etech Leadership Table. Daniel, I'm so happy to have you here. I am part of the Etech family, and we're already related because we're JMT together, so that's awesome.
Absolutely.
I actually got my JMT membership right at the same year COVID struck. So I was the first virtual JMT member. I was really excited about that. So I got mine
right before COVID, but then with COVID, it just changed. The business caused me to kind of put everything on hold. And then as soon as I got back to a stable place, I was like right back in it.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to be stepping back. We use all of John Maxwell stuff for our company. So that's why the other thing is, a lot of times I get to talk to business experts, but you are right up the alley of what we deal with at Etech. So today's topic is exciting. We bring people into the leadership table. And so welcome to your first seat at the Etech Leadership Table, Mr. Daniel Burks. And this is going to be special today because guess who's staying with us? Our very own BPO winner of the year for Etech, Jim Iyoob. So we're excited to have him here. Listen, when we sit at the Etech Leadership Table, usually we bring a drink to the table or a snack or something. So I got to ask you guys, Jim, what you drinking today? Oh, in the Etech cup. In the Etech cup. You are good. You are good. So what do you got? Oh, no. Here we go. Straight up Red Bull. So in like 15 minutes, he's going to be exploding. That's going to be awesome.
Right. That's right.
I'm drinking, I told Namisha, it says you're my favorite, so you guys are my favorite, but I'm drinking a fruit smoothie. I'm drinking a fruit smoothie today. So I'm trying to be healthy. Trying to be healthy today. But I probably could use a little bit of that Red Bull, just, Sonic, and I am from Texas, Daniel, and I noticed that you're from Rogers, Arkansas, right? Rogers, Arkansas, that's where you are now. So podcasters, pull up a table, pull up to the table, grab your favorite cup because you are about to be wowed today. We have Daniel and Jim. Jim's going to help me with some questions for Daniel. We just have 3 short questions, but on the most amazing topic. We've all faced this. We've seen it. If you've got any years of experience in leadership, you've seen this. You've seen people good at this. You've seen people that struggle with this incredibly awfully, right? So the topic today is how to lead with empathy, how to nurture strong relationships, but still drive results. That's the key right there. That's that heart and mind balance. So Daniel's going to bring us into that. So pull your chair up, podcasters. Come on, grab your cup because you're about to learn a few things. We have 3 questions for Daniel. He's going to break them down. He's got that Red Bull. It won't take a long time, but you're going to need to take some notes. Definitely. So welcome, Daniel. I know currently you're in Rogers, Arkansas, and you serve as the director of IT. Is that correct?
Currently sit in the customer experience department. And
okay.
Most recently, I was the VP of customer experience, but now I'm the VP of product and process in the customer experience department. So it was a little bit of a kind of narrowing my focus a little bit in developing programs and processes inside the organization to help drive basically everything that's customer service, right? Everything that's customer experience related. I'm driving all of those initiatives so that from operationalizing programs, they are customer experience centric.
Wow. So are you a mastermind behind Grill and Chill?
No, I'm not the mastermind behind Grill and Chill. That's my marketing team. That was something that they put together. Okay,
very good. All right. Well, I know in case you guys when we sit at the table together, we want to get to know each other a little more. You're definitely a keynote speaker. That's where Jim has seen you from, speaking events. You're an executive coach. We have that in common. That takes a neat skill set. Leadership, management expert, and John Maxwell team member, but a DISC administrator as well. So welcome to the table. Let's dive into this empathy thing and how strange it can be, how we can see it done really well and really, really awfully. So what are some, first of all, there's some major misconceptions about a lot of things in the world. We're not going to go into all those today, but when we talk about empathy, there's some major misconceptions. In your mind, Daniel, what are the misconceptions about empathy?
That's a really great question. And you see that a lot with new managers, but, as time goes on, existing managers that have kind of fallen in this space where they feel like empathy is a weakness. They feel like that empathy doesn't allow them to lead at the level they need to because it puts them in a place of vulnerability. And nothing could be further from the truth. Empathy is probably one of the cornerstones of, John Maxwell will tell you, great leadership requires empathy, right? But even in just, managing and trying to be good at what you do, at the end of the day, we lead and manage people. And without empathy, there's no connection. There's no ability to move people in a direction they need to go without being able to connect with them.
That's awesome. Yeah, John would definitely say that. And I see that people either lead with too much empathy or they lead with not enough empathy, right?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
It's just definitely the heart and mind balance in that. And I really, you're right on the new managers have a struggle with this, and even us. I know that Jim, I talk to Jim, we meet regularly. It is a struggle in that area. So that kind of leads us to our second question that Jim's going to ask you about being empathetic.
Yeah, absolutely. So this one's near and dear to my heart. So the question I have is, some leaders I feel are more concerned, right, about how they make someone feel, which then sometimes sacrifices results. So if you could help not only me, but all of our listeners, how can we help them be empathetic, but also drive results and not being so worried about how they make someone feel and hurt their feelings?
Yeah, absolutely. One of my favorite quotes is Plato, and the highest form of knowledge is empathy, for it requires us to suspend our egos and live in another's world. Okay, so the highest form of knowledge is empathy, for it requires us to suspend our egos and then live in another's world. And I think empathy is a key component to effective leadership, but I really believe in this concept that we manage processes and we lead people. And as managers for organizations, okay, if we allow ourselves to lose track of what we're really, being asked to do as an organization, then, everything else kind of falls apart. And so I feel like that simply really good communication is the kind of cornerstone of empathetic leaders who want to navigate the challenges of tough situations as it relates to their people. So I think it's foolish to lose track of the mission. We manage, through day-to-day processes through our organization. Our number one, request from our organization is that we continue to be successful and stay to the KPIs and measure the business piece of it. But when that comes down to our people, them knowing what winning is, understanding their role in what winning is as important as every other soft skill that we have to have, because at the end of the day, their success is tied into their ability to complete the mission as well. And as leaders, if I move out of the management role for a second into the leadership role, as leaders, if we fail to navigate them through the trip falls and hazards of day-to-day just running their business, there's an opportunity for us to fail them in a very big way. And so when we start confusing having to be over empathetic and understanding and trying to connect in a way that is outside of how the company and the businesses are expecting us to perform, okay, you have a failure of another type. And so, I put some things on here that I just thought were really, valuable to handling that empathy piece of managing to a KPI or to an expectation that's tied in with our role. And in 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, one of the things that I took away many years ago was this just very simple statement, but it really meant a lot to me over the last 25 years of leading organizations. And that was to seek first to understand, then to be understood. And I said that good communication, okay, was key to empathy. Really, it's really good active listening. right? And, great leaders ask great questions. So as I'm working through any type of issue or problem or working with my folks, I always ensure that the bigger mission stays forefront. We understand that we still have something to accomplish. We have to keep our entire organization pulling in the same direction. But number one, I always ask questions, right? You got to ask questions. I have to, number two, listen to understand. But the part that I think gets left out a lot, okay, is I have to act and make a decision. So when you're working through with your organization and you're trying to overcome, obstacles and stuff, a lot of folks will go around and they will, pretend to listen and they'll, ask some questions as a platitude, but then they don't actually go and take action to try to solve some of the issues. And so I wrote something that I thought that was, very important to this, is that you can pretend to listen, but your team is watching. If you do not make a decision or act to solve their problems, put to rest smaller problems, and then smooth over bumps, you will lose trust with your team. The most important component of an operational leader's arsenal is trust. It can take years to establish, but it can take seconds to lose. The key to trust are leaders' high integrity, helping our teams win, and constant and real communication. And I think that, as we're tying empathy into all of this, understanding where they're coming from, understanding their pain points, asking questions and listening to them as they talk about their struggles, and then guiding them back to solving the most important problem of their day and keeping them focused on the mission, you actually get to win in two places. You keep the trust, you establish and keep the trust, but then you also keep them focused and performing well in the role that really is why they're there.
Outstanding. I think Melissa could jump all over this one with those words. Those are some good ones.
He nailed that one. When you're talking about 25 years of experience, he's not speaking he's reading his notes, but those are paths he's walked in. I can guarantee you in 25 years, that is speaking from the heart. So listen here, I hope you're taking notes. I hope you wrote down. I'm taking notes, to be I'm honest. Ray Kroc, the founder of McDonald's, he said, when you're green, you're growing. When you're ripe, you start to rot. So
yes, ma'am.
you gotta stay growing. So I think that's phenomenal.
Yeah. So if you think about it, let me just add one thing, Melissa. So if you think about it, we talked about this morning. So when you take action, so if anybody is really empathetic and cares about you, yep, they will tell you whatever. And I will use my wife as the example. I got up this morning, got dressed, and the first thing I come out, she says, that doesn't match, right? And I'm like, no one's going to see my pants. They're only going to see the shirt. She's like, it doesn't matter. Take them off. Like, that's true. And then, like you said about taking action, I took action. I changed, of course, just in case I stood up, right? But if you think about it, not everybody will tell you that. And Melissa and I talk about this all the time, Daniel. Like, I've always said to, friends of mine, including Melissa, if you see my daughter smoke, please tell me, right? And I think some people, and you've nailed it with great, and I took a lot of good notes, but think about it. Some people are afraid to tell you because they're going to feel they're going to hurt your feelings, which I think you really helped a lot of our listeners and myself as well individually. So thank you so much. Back to you, Melissa. Sorry.
Yeah, no, you guys this is good. Hey, this is table talk. This is, when you sit around the table with your family, this is what happens. And Daniel, I want you to feel comfortable at this table too, because we really have two different ways of looking at this, right? So Daniel's coming in saying a lot of leaders they just avoid that empathy, right? They steer away from the empathy. They're asking questions, which, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, which is great, right? Then number two, he nailed it here. He said, listen to understand and not be understood. So a lot of those, they're trying to get their point across first, right? They're trying to get you to hear how smart they are or what they know about it. Daniel just mentioned his company is in a new reorg, right? So it's good that they have someone like Daniel on the team where he's going to try to listen to understand their point of view, what they think success looks like, right? But on Jim's point, he's like, some leaders just avoid telling you the truth or telling you what you need to hear, just like he said with his wife, right? That is the two different sides of empathy. One, over empathetic, right? And the other, is, well, Jim's side is being over empathetic, and Daniel's side is needing to step up your empathy a little bit, right? And the third thing, both of you are just marrying together. Podcasters, you better take some notes here. This is going to help you today with your family and at work. Asking the questions on both sides of empathy, right? Listen, because I'm sure Kelsey, Jim's wife, is like, you're going to be in a podcast today. You're not matching, right? And then to Daniel's point of view, it's like, ask some curious, be curious. I pulled out that word with Daniel when you said be curious. Listen to understand. And then the third thing is act to make decisions.
Yeah, love that.
And that's where I think that is the secret sauce when it comes to empathy. I think Daniel has laid it out perfectly when you're trying to give us, the third question I was going to ask you is, what are some practical things we can do? You gave these 3, you may have something else, but act to make decisions. If you are being overly empathetic with someone, caring for them and showing them all this stuff, and you don't act on anything, just like Daniel said, trust, garbage, right? And then if you're not being empathetic enough, you're not helping them to take the action they need to be successful. So am I marrying those two right, Daniel? Is that what we're going
absolutely
here?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that where we're going to see a lot of managers struggle is that if they are too focused on the mission and not focused enough on the people, okay, they're going to have hurt feelings and a lot of miscommunication that has gone on. One of my great favorite sayings is playwright George Bernard Shaw said, the greatest problem with communication is the illusion that it has been accomplished, right? And so a lot of times leaders are talking and they're assuming that they're communicating. You brought up a great point, Melissa, where they said that, they're wanting to show how smart they are. They're wanting to solve the problem. Husbands, we do that all the time, right? We're very active in solving the problems. How our brain works. And a lot of times what folks are looking for, the most important piece of they're looking for is that, you actually heard them, okay, and you value their opinion enough to ask some questions and seek some deeper understanding. And then when necessary, go take action. And that's where, that empathy crosses over into trust because, okay, you put yourself in their shoes, you listen to their, issues and opportunities. Sometimes you have to do nothing but other than say, thank you for sharing that with me. I can see that you feel very strongly about it. And other times you have to go, hey, you know what, that's a real problem and I'm a problem solver. Let me go take care of that for you. Right.
Yeah.
And I want to give you a kind of a really small story that I thought was very interesting. Was I took over a store many years ago when I was working for a really large retailer, and I had a lot of opportunity in the store around morale. And it was just the simplest thing, right? And it was one of those things where, in your own self, sometimes you miss things that are really obvious. And on the back wall in the hallway was the associates' schedules. And the hallway wasn't very well lit, and the scheduling boards were really tall. And I had a lot of older folks that worked in my store that could not see or they weren't tall enough to read their schedule, and it was a huge frustration for them. Now, I'm 6 foot and a little bit. That was not something that ever even registered on me. I was a young man. My eyesight was great, and I was salary, so I never looked at those schedules. So moving those schedule boards down, okay, and have an electrician put some lights in over the top of them, I couldn't have done anything more for those associates. They thought that was the greatest thing ever. Wow. That store had been there for 13 years. Those boards had been hanging up there for 13 years. The turnover had been at 65 or 70% for 13 years. And it was something as simple as just going, hey, listen, if I could fix anything for you today, what would you ask me to fix? We can't see the schedule board, boss. Why not? It's too tall and it's too dark. I can fix that, right?
Action.
And so that was a really kind of neat illustration for me as a leader to walk away with I simply asked a question and got a very simple answer to a very simple problem to solve. And yet it meant a lot to those folks.
I think we downplay simplicity a little bit. That's a big thing in the food world. I don't know if you're a foodie like Jim and I are, but you know how we talk about simple ingredients make the best meal, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's
Agreed.
Exactly what you just said. Like there's 3 simple ingredients. You gave us Okay, take notes here. Those 3 ingredients. That story walked us through the 3 ingredients. Asking questions. Hey, what can I do for you? Right? Number 2, listen to understand, because you're 6 foot, you're a young guy with great vision. You listen to understand, not be understood. But that third one, that taking action. It's simple, delicious ingredients. And that third one I call muddy boots. Muddy boots. It's like, I'm from Texas, and when we see people with clean boots, you know what that means? That means
they don't do the work.
They don't do no kind of work. Yeah. They talk about work, but they're not doing the work. So podcasters, get your boots muddy. And if you're gonna be phenomenal, just like Daniel and Jim are at asking questions and listening to understand, it's that third ingredient. We talk about making lemonade. You need lemons. What else do you need?
Sugar and water.
That's it. What if you leave an ingredient out? What do you have?
Nope.
What if you leave
it? Don't taste right.
Not the same.
It don't taste right.
It don't taste right. And that's the same thing with empathy. Sometimes it don't taste right when you leave something out. So Daniel, just I know you gave us like some practical applications, but do you have anything else in that pocket of yours that you're pulling out on some practical applications when it comes to empathy?
Yes, ma'am. This one was actually my favorite one because it brought back to my memory a couple of things. So John Maxwell, we've already talked about, he talks about walking slowly through the crowd, right?
Yep.
Okay. And then Sam Walton says he called it coaching by walking around. We're not talking about coaching for performance. He's talking about coaching people up, right? Coaching by walking around. Both men were talking about engagement, right? As leaders of organizations get further from their team, as they move up in the organization, or if roles and responsibilities change, or if they just have a lot of responsibility, so often they lose that engagement piece where they're intentionally walking slowly through the crowd and asking questions and listening to their associates. And you'd be surprised how useful that is for a bunch of different things. And I just was thinking back and past in my history, and I'd heard Mr. Sam say it first, coaching by walking around, but I translated that into some behaviors. And so knowing your people helps you to have empathy for them. So, how do you get to know your people? Especially you have a mission as a manager or a leader of an organization. You've got income statements and meetings and conference calls and yada, yada, yada. It takes you away. And especially with some of our teams being remote, okay, the intentionality behind this activity is more important now than it has ever been. And if you look at the younger generations, their need for this type of guidance, leadership, and really interaction is higher than it ever been. Soft skills and emotional quotient, we talked about those things for years, but you actually have to see it play out in real time today because the folks are asking for that type of engagement. And so I just thought back on my time and how I viewed my associates and my employees at different roles and responsibilities. And I ate lunch in the break room. Right. Mm-hmm. I'd gone to funerals. I shared pictures of, my kids' celebrations, and they shared their pictures with me. And a lot of times I think managers get in their heads and leaders get in their heads that, by being, open and compassionate and sharing those things that, there's a line there, some invisible line, and you're crossing those lines. And I do feel like that you have to know where the line is. I think you have to be really good at making sure that your folks know where that line is, but that doesn't mean that you're not a person and they're not a person and you don't have shared interests, because when those shared interests like my son's graduation, birthday parties, death or illness in families and friends, we all share those things. And I think that's where empathy really starts connecting for you, because they understand that you're going to hold them accountable to the roles and responsibilities that they're signed on for, but you start garnering trust and love really with your folks because you take time to walk slowly through the crowd and just be connected with them. John's always saying, hi, I'm John Maxwell, I'm your friend. What he's really trying to tell you there is that friends are connected and that he's going to invest in you and have value in you. And you have to, be willing to accept that. Empathy at work has a lot to do with relationships, and relationships is not crossing lines. Relationship is being able to look at somebody that you recognize enough and go, hey, listen, those are new glasses, aren't they? I really like them on you. They look good. Okay. you've not crossed any line there. Okay, you've made somebody who probably stood in front of the glasses thing for 45 minutes trying to pick out the perfect glasses for their eyes feel good about their choice, right?
Yeah.
And so I really believe that good leaders show people the way, great leaders bring people along with them. Okay, so there's never lonely at the top.
I tell you, Dan, you got to come back and sit at this table.
Absolutely.
I would love to.
Back.
This is, when you say knowing your people, you use such, I love your ingredients. The ingredients are so simple, but they're so powerful, right? I bet you can cook well too. Can you cook good?
My wife loves when I cook.
Okay, very good. So Jim's the same way. It's the simple, powerful ingredients. At Etech, we teach, coaching. Back in the day, probably, when we all three started, it was MBWA, managed by walking around, right? That's what we were taught, MBWA. Yep. But I love the simple ingredients you put on there, CBWA, coach by walking around, right? I just want to add one tiny thing when you talk about getting to know your team, the number one practical application. So if you're taking notes, podcasters, he gave us 3 steps, right? The questions, the seeking to understand before you are understood. And then he also said, you got to get your boots muddy, right? You got to take some action. You can't just sit there and be a library full of information. You got to check out a book and take it out the door, right? And then the practical application of knowing your people, right? Knowing your people. So at Etech, we teach every leader to have a getting to know you conversation. We teach them like a 3-phase process on how to balance, like not talking about things that are inappropriate, but balancing and getting to know you. And you think that's like they should know that, but no, we have not taught that. So we teach that in our company. That's the first thing we teach them in coaching, get to know you. And I use this example, Barbara Walters. She's interviewed so many people in her lifetime, right? Yeah. But we didn't really know much about Barbara Walters. She found she could get to the deepest part of any interview. And the problem there was when you're trying to lead someone, it cannot be an interview. I cannot know everything about Jim and he knows nothing about me. So that's where Daniel hit the nail on the head, right? He's saying, tell them about your kids graduating, right? Ask them about theirs. It's a two-way street. So because of this podcast, let Etech be on notice. I'm changing the name of our first strategy of getting to know you to getting to know we, right? Because if it is to be, it begins with me, right?
Me,
so
amen.
Amen. So getting to know we. And I think that's where Daniel is, he's really powerful at saying, we try to know so much about, like Jim, he learns a lot about Daniel, right? But Daniel's trying to learn about Jim. And Jim needs to show some information about himself. It's getting to know we. But you guys have been phenomenal in this word of empathy. We could go on about empathy all day, but then Jim will get so bored. He'll need another Red Bull. He'll need borrow Daniel's Red Bull. But podcasters, we've been getting nuggets all the time at this table. So I hope you've enjoyed that. Until next time at the Etech Leadership table, work on your empathy. Some adding to or taking from wherever your balance needs to be of heart and mind. And we'll see you next time on Etech Leadership Table. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.